most of you were at the first conversation on race that we had on March 30th. How many people were here last time? Excellent. Well, great. Thank you, and welcome everyone again, and welcome people who are new to the conversation. And we're going to certainly pick up where we left off, but we're also going to, engage in some new activities. And we have with us tonight a fellow board member of World of Wellesley, Dr. Robyn Chappman, who is Associate Provost and Director of Diversity and Inclusion at Wellesley College. So we're really excited to have Dr. Robyn Chappman with us. We'll give you a good hand. And so what we're going to do this evening is Dr. Chappman will, Robyn will work us through an activity, have a conversation, we'll do some dialogue, and then we'll break into our table conversations, and we'll sort of guide you a little bit, but each of you should have a facilitator at the table, and if not, make it up, and again, you can have that conversation. Each one of the handouts, there's some guidelines for the conversation you definitely want to go over, and everyone, please make sure that you do take a handout. There's a lot of common language and definitions that are on the table that I think are very, very important to have in your mind when you're having a conversation around race and racism and prejudice and stereotypes, that if we start with common language, if we understand the definitions that we're using for this space, then obviously then we can talk together, because we both understand what that definition is for this space. And so, yeah, excellent. So we will get started. Anybody have any questions? I know a couple people have to leave. If you have to leave, you can certainly, and if people certainly come in, we'll welcome them into the space. Is someone coming in, I hope?
I think so.
Unless that's
Amber.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's the Key Club, which was very helpful this evening to help us set up. All right, so welcome everyone. And thank you, Robyn.
Okay, great. Thank you, Michelle. So, Michelle and I have been actually working together for quite a while. That hurts. And our part of our nefarious plan is to make sure that Wellesley College is working alongside everyone in the town and the community on a lot of these issues. So even if they're not at some events, that's because we're doing that work, definitely been doing that work on campus anyway. We host the MLK Breakfast now every year that WOW puts on. This is the third time we've done it, and as far as we're concerned, we're going to keep doing it and try to get more folks from the town that actually come to the breakfast as well. So, spread the word on that. And then I'm on the board, and, so we need more folks from Wellesley College on the board. So we've been populating so that we can be as vested. I mean, this is not in a way, this is our community, and we're your college. Even if, we don't on a day-to-day basis, our students come out into the town and do whatever it is they're doing, eating pizza or whatever. And it's just important that, we are all, moving forward in what I consider to be important life skills, at the same time. You don't want to have one group doing that and not the other one. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's going to happen to you tonight. So as Michelle sort of, alluded to, we're going to put you to work. You're going to be working. So you're not going to listen to me talking a whole bunch except for now. You're going to be working. It's going to be fun. It's not going to hurt. And by the time we're through, you are actually going to be the ones that are going to be the architects, the idea barons and baronesses, or whatever other pronoun, of some things that we might be able to do as a town, as a campus, as a community. So I will explain each of these things as we go along, including the role of the facilitator. It's not a big deal, so, nothing too scary here. But I really wanted you to have experiences around some of the phenomena we're going to talk about where you will completely get it, as opposed to looking at a bunch of slides, which I could have done very easily, but I decided I'm going to put them to work. So we're going to cover a few topics tonight. One of them is going to be unconscious bias. We're not going to go into it too deep, but you will have a deep experience with that. I think we have time to do a short and there's enough people to do an exercise around micro messaging. It's not going to hurt. It'll be fun, but it'll be clear what we mean by that. And then I'll talk a little bit about how they're connected, how they're related. And then we'll move on from doing that to thinking about ways that we can have a better understanding of ourselves as individuals and our biases and the questions and reflection that we can do and ask our families and friends to do to sort of just increase our understanding of ourselves so that we can interrupt behaviors that will happen, whether we understand it or not. They're unconscious, but if you know that you have a certain sort of tendency, you know that your brain and the way it filters a particular way, then you can do something to proactively interrupt it. Okay, and then also talk about how to be resilient, because everybody makes mistakes. You're trying, but generally the reaction is to retreat and not try anymore. And we want people to stay in the work, and that's something that's almost never talked about. So we'll just have a brief discussion or brainstorm or something around that, and then we're going to get around to the designing part, which I'll talk about, and there will be questions. So we have handouts for these different things. They're not on your table yet, but we just wanted to get you started. So if you could give these out. So the first activity, it's actually one of my favorites. How many are familiar with the concept of unconscious bias, or just bias? Okay. So what have you heard about it, or what do you think it is? This is not a test. I just want to hear your ideas.
I guess it's a belief about differences among people, which we don't really hold on conscious minds, but it affects what we do and how we behave. Okay,
so belief that we may not be consciously aware of driving, that might end up driving behaviors or decisions or actions, etc. Anybody else? Just, when you think unconscious bias, what comes to mind?
Cultural assumptions that are built into the way it is.
Cultural assumptions, and I do this work on campus a lot. And besides the culture you grew up with, right, or the culture I grew up with, there's a lot of cultures that we all do our brains do a lot of filtering. So if you're in chemistry, or the chemistry department, that has a particular culture. The field discipline of chemistry has its own culture, how language is used, everything. The field of political science has its own culture. The office you may work in or the store you may work in has its own. There are assumptions about what is normal, what is taboo, how you hold your body, how you dress, how you talk. If you go somewhere where you can tell what the uniform is. I go to a lot of conferences for different disciplines, and I don't even need to see the sign. I can tell by what people are wearing what discipline it is. That's how powerful it is. So when you think of culture, don't just think of the culture that you grew up with, although that's obviously completely ingrained, but you have actually taken on a whole variety of cultures that you would not even be aware that you've taken on. So that's just important to remember as well. Anyone else? Any other? Yeah.
I was thinking, you meet some people of a certain culture, and then you bias that everyone in that culture is going to.
Right. So assigning some experience or thought about that experience to everyone in that group. So that's like a stereotype about what everyone in that group, no matter who they are and where you meet them on the planet, what they're going to be doing or what you can expect is going to happen. So that's important as well. That's a good one. Any others?
I would say it has a belief, but also a real emotional part to it.
That's very, very important. Yeah, so these are, what's her name? Gina, I can't remember everything's name. Hi, Gina. There is an emotional, it is called affective, component to what our brains do when it's filtering, etc. So I'm not going to tell you why our brains are filtering until after the activity, because then you'll realize a lot of things, and I can not have to say all of it again. But it's really important to know that we like to think we're objective. I know I like to say, well, I don't say it anymore, but I have this idea that I'm a fair person. I'm a nice person, right?
Yeah, very.
Try to treat everybody, the same and well. I mean, I'm, right? Wrong, myth. And it's not because I'm a bad person, it's because my brain is driving more than we actually may realize in our behavior. There's a conscious component and an unconscious component. And the unconscious component feeds actually information. I don't have my engineering drawing to show, like I have a control diagram that shows how it works. Feeds what our conscious thoughts are going to be and what direction you're going to take. So on that note, welcome, Russ. Just grab a seat at any table, get comfy when you're ready.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
when you're ready. So we're going to just dive right in to the first activity. I promise it'll be fun. So I had my assistant make, this should be on your table. Everyone has something that looks like this. So yeah, pass them around. We just put them down. Sorry for the tiny print. I forgot to tell my assistant, who has much younger eyes than many of us, to make it on a 8.5 by 11. So the type would be bigger. So, but I will read the scenario to you anyway. But how this activity works is, this is a very simple, short story. And then there are a series of 11 true, false questions. Even though there's something that says comments, you forget that exists. You have to answer true or false. Okay? And I'm going to read it to you as well. Welcome. Just grab a seat.
Hi, how are you?
And
Come sit with us, or- yeah.
There's one important component to the first part of this activity. This activity has three parts. The important thing is you cannot talk to one another while you're answering your true-false questions. Don't even look at your partner's page.
Can you look back at what the story
Oh, no, you
is?
can look at your
can
stuff
look
as
back
much
at
as you
the story.
want.
Don't cheat, Mary.
But don't talk to, it's gonna be, and I'm saying it now, you're thinking, oh, sure, it's gonna be hard not to do it, that's why I'm telling you. Don't talk to the other folks at the table and just kind of get through it. And even if you don't get to answer all the questions, that's okay, but just work your way through. So I'm gonna read it to you, but it's also printed at the very top. And we'll take about 5 minutes for you to answer the questions. So here's the story. A businessman had just turned off the lights in the store when a man appeared and demanded money. The owner opened a cash register. The contents of the cash register were scooped up and the man sped away. A member of the police force was notified promptly. Okay, that's a pretty simple story, right? So why don't you take a stab at answering those true-false questions, and then I'll interrupt you at some point. If you have any questions, just put your hand up and I'll come over. First of all, how many people found that some folks had answers different from theirs? Yeah, that's pretty much everyone. How many people, after talking a little bit about your thinking and their thinking, changed your answer? Right? So, it's kind of interesting. I mean, what are your thoughts about why we would have different answers to some of these? Why, even if it's just a crazy idea, why do you think that happened? Why did it get so loud in here?
Because we think differently.
Because we think differently, right. Any other?
Carefully.
Yeah, because I interpreted it, and I read it too quickly, and then when I went back and read it again, I interpreted it in a different way.
So you sped through it, or just using the word?
Yeah, that's
You went through it quickly the first time, and then realized you had to review and reflect and
yes.
slow things down a little
Yes.
bit so you can kind of get a sense of what was really
Exactly.
going on.
Well, there's enough ambiguity in the basic story
Yes.
that you can look at it from different angles.
Right.
But we each bring the definition of events as well as people that are ours, and they're all different.
That's right. Thanks, Russ. I mean, when there's ambiguity, and sometimes even when there's not ambiguity, but especially when there is ambiguity, people bring their own filters, their own, experiences, etc., to what they think.
So one of the things that just sort of, from Paula speaking, that I think that I think that sometimes what our brain does is that we think we see what we want to see, or we think, we're like, oh yeah, no, that's what I want to see. It's like you don't even realize it, that you automatically assume something.
That's what I'm giving.
Yes. And you read it, and that's what it said. But then you read it again, you're like, oh no, that's not what it said.
And that's actually very true. And not that there's a tool for understanding how that works called a ladder of inference. We're not going to learn that tonight, but you're free to Google it and look into it. It's Chris Argulis's work. What it does is it basically, when you you think you're having a first conscious thought, what your brain has done to get you to that happens in a split second. But there are actually specific steps that your brain always goes through. Through all kinds of techniques, MIRs and other experiments, they know what these are. And deciding what data, first there's the observable world, and your brain decides what data it's going to pay attention to. It's like a bowl of stuff, and I'm only going to pay attention to this stuff. And it can vary. If somebody's really late and had you waiting, one of the things you're really paying attention to is what time it is. Right. Like, what you focus on can be contextual as well, depends on the or circumstantial. So yes, that is very true. Any other? Yeah.
The way you phrase that, it sounds like your brain is filtering and picking out things, but in fact your brain is also making things up.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So why am I even here? You guys are like answering all this stuff. So yes. So what your brain is actually trying to do, and then we'll take a look at this. It is trying, and this is actually why we're so successful as a species. And some animals do this well too, but we do it really well, and we have language, so it doesn't hurt. We have a particular kind of language, a symbolic language. So our brains are helping us navigate the world with incomplete, missing information, or having to make decisions about things. And if there's any part of what you might need to come to an answer, your brain is super excited and happy to fill it in for you. And that is actually its job. That is normal cognitive functioning. Unless you're brain damaged, which some people who have experienced brain damage don't do this as well. It depends on where on the brain. But as long as you're not brain damaged or something like that, your brain, and it's healthy, it's actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to fill in information enough for you to act. Whether it's fight or flight, or whether it's, to make assumption about, or a decision, or evaluate, your brain is doing what it's supposed to do. So it's kind of important to know what your brain might be doing. And we'll talk about that in about 10 minutes. Yeah.
I'm so glad you made all those points. I had a sort of what was an interesting, I don't want to say crazy, interesting conversation with an individual about stereotyping. Which to me says profiling, but it depends on your background and how you're thinking. This individual's, what he was adamant about was that it's important on some level to stereotype, that you have to, and that helps you to sort of determine how you should act in a particular situation or in a given situation. And so we had a big debate because he happened to be a white man, and as we started to talk about like places from where you come in neighborhoods, and me being from Boston neighborhood, and I would say, well, for the most part, stereotypes, you're not hearing what I'm saying in terms of the negative piece, because you're the stereotype of you being from where you are, stereotype, and me being from where I am, from Roxbury, you're really not going to be harmed by the stereotypes that come your way necessarily. I'm kind of at a risk, right?
Right.
But so it's so tricky though, because I've taken some classes with the notion that depending on the way your brain has developed and
Right.
sort of the things that you were talking about with the lateral
Yeah.
and sort of, I don't know if they're really called synapses, but sort of parts of your brain that, depending on how you were raised and how they were
Yeah.
developed, make a decision in a split moment and decide something really means that different people sort of think of things differently. And I'm trying to tie it back to what I was talking about the stereotype piece. Like, so yeah, your brain's going to fill in some things and make some assumptions. And I guess what I was thinking is then knowing how your brain works, I think you just said it and I'm repeating what you said, you kind of have to teach yourself to combat that in certain, if it's harmful.
And
or
there are
harmful,
things you can do. You cannot eliminate it.
you cannot eliminate. That's interesting. Yeah.
Because people say, oh, I'm like, no, that's,
Yeah.
if somebody told you that, they lied to you, they didn't know that. You can, however, continue to attempt to minimize more and more of the negative, what they call cognitive errors, when you make a mistake based on your filling in. You can kind of minimize that with practice. But, you know, even I sometimes, actually probably more often than I realize, make a cognitive error.
Do you think that, well, you're saying that if our brain encounters a situation where we know this part and we know this part, but this part we don't
Right.
know,
Your brain is going to help you.
then maybe too that like if it has to do with people of another color or something like that, the more experience I have then of real life experience with people that are different from me, the more that gap doesn't exist, the more that I fill
Right.
it in with actual lived experience
That's
instead
right.
of with.
That's right. That's why it's important to engage one another. And actually, I'll get to you in a second. When as a baby, I guess, by the time we're 2 years old, no later than that actually, in developmental cognition, babies, because they're still kind of babies, toddlers, it's clear what are the in groups and what are the out groups. It is completely clear. And this is why I encourage all my friends and all, I said, as soon as your babies are born and up, you know, be aggressive about this in the first 2 years, you have to expose them to as many different kinds of people as possible, and not in a completely passive sort of we'll watch a show kind of way, which is good too, but literally, you know, play dates, have them engaging with different kinds of people, because that's going to be part of their hard wiring. And if that was not done when they were that age, it's hardwired the other way around. There's no way to change it. It's 2 years old. Yeah, okay, and then 2 years old. And then by 5 years old, at the latest in their cognitive development, children are clear on stereotypes and positive and negative and what they mean. So, I mean, I've had instances where I've seen someone walking with a child that's probably 4 or 5 years old, and, you know, like I'm in the big mall, actually, and usually not a lot of black people there, but there's some, and they'll see me, and you can tell they're just terrified. The parent hasn't even done anything, but they have already, in turn, it's hardwired at that point. It's done, the cake is baked, it's done. This is why it's important for us, and it was done for me too, although actually I had more interaction as a kid, but this is why it's important to do this work, because we have to figure out how to function in spite of that. I know you had your hand up.
No, I was just going to add on to what Betsy and Bill were saying. I mean, part of the reason why, I think people resort to stereotypes, and I always explain to my students, is that, stereotypes are going to exist is because it's what people are comfortable with. Indirectly, they've been taught a certain way through culture to have that. And so what they do is, they have a filing cabinet, and they're like, okay, well, let me go back to this file. This is one interaction, so I'm going to use that because I'm uncomfortable right now. Make me more comfortable. I'm going to draw from that one experience or that one thing that I do know of to make myself comfortable. And so, part of the hardwiring, and this is so hard for an adult, for youth, for anyone, is to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Because that's the part where you're going to be able to make that change and to create that wire.
That's exactly right. And actually,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. And whenever I'm teaching about any of this, there's a couple of things. I always tell people, and they're always so disappointed at the beginning of the workshop, because they come in there thinking, I'm going to learn how to not be biased. They're all excited. And then I say, okay, let me just be clear that you are not going to ever be comfortable around difference. Ever. If you're not already comfortable, you will never be. I said, my stomach is a wreck right now. Actually, it's a wreck right now, too. I mean, you will never be comfortable. We are not aiming for comfort. We are aiming for being able to sit with the discomfort and still have clarity in how we might proceed to engage with one another. That's actually the goal. The other one is unrealistic because it's never going to go, you got 20 years of therapy. It's not going anywhere. It's hardwired now. It's too late. But we can do things to preemptively or just to interrupt. So, Russ, yeah.
I just wanted to mention that you was mentioning some of the examples here about a black person and a white child being, but it occurs with white children and white men. And
Oh, no, it can occur with
it's
anything
not,
different.
it's not just race.
Yeah, it's not just race. No. What we're talking about is how our brains, and at an early age, when kids or babies are that young, that's when their brains are growing the fastest.
Yeah.
It's laying down some heavy wiring. And so that's why it becomes hardwired. By the time they're 5, it's hardwired. But yeah, this is around anything that has been communicated to them in various ways as a positive or negative, etc.
So I have a grandson who's 2, and I have seen this a couple times.
Yeah.
And we have a Congolese student who lives in our house when he's on break. And when James was at my house, and Emmanuel was someone he hadn't seen before, and
different.
Yeah, and different. And the way I do it is, he does live in Dorchester, so he sees a lot of black people coming and going. He lives in Common Square. So the way I do it is I take him on my lap, and then I have a nice conversation with Emmanuel, and I figure, he's just going to have to sense that I am very comfortable and friendly with this person,
Right.
and this person is fine, and you are safe because you're on my lap. So by extension, you're safe with this person, kind of like that.
And actually, if he's 2 already, the fact that he lives in a neighborhood with people that look different actually doesn't do very much with wiring.
He was actually about 1.5 years, and Emmanuel's studying to be a doctor, and we talked about it after James went down for a nap, and Emmanuel said he said when he worked at Common Square as an intern, his pediatrician said, who he was shadowing, said you should see that reaction at age 18 months. If you don't, that child is probably being abused at home because children should grip the person they're familiar with when they see someone who they don't know.
Right, who they don't know.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that just seeing people is not enough to change the wiring, unless I forgot the name. I'm sorry.
James.
I'm sure he's very cute. Sure, he's very cute. Has been in situations where you are actually engaged in the lives of people who are different. That's when, for them, even at 18 months, it's not a shock because there's nothing strange going on.
Right.
But if that has not been the case, just them seeing it is not enough because they also see TV and they see, what I mean? So they don't, as far as that's what they've learned. So he's not 5 yet. So there's an opportunity to give him those credible, authentic, real engagement with different kinds of people and to talk to him like we did with my nephew when he was that age. He's 13 now, he's taller than me. But literally have conversations with him, and they're fascinated by the idea of stereotypes when they learn about it. Even at 4, they just think it's goofy. They're like, well, that doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't make sense. And but the fact that he's engaging, then the hardwiring will be different.
More flexible anyway.
Yeah, but the part about the in-group, out-groups, if he's 2, it's too late. But it's too late. It was too late for all of us, but that's okay, because then he can learn ways to interrupt that as an adult or as a young person. So that's important. So,
Is the philosophy, though,
it's the science. It's actually not philosophy.
okay, does the science show that it's an absolute in concrete, or is there...
It's concrete. There's parts of the brain functioning, especially when you're a child, that determines what the hard wiring is going to be. And then other associations and connections can be made to it as you go through your life. And that's part of what we're doing in this work. But the wire, it is hardwired. That's what it is.
So
So-
you have to run some new software.
You have to include, right, you have to have some new subroutines that you can run along with whatever the wiring is gonna do. So I took you away from this exercise for a second, but, would you like to know the answers?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll tell you right now that only 2 of the responses are true. So then everybody checks their page, okay? I'll let you
6
finish.
and 11.
Yes, there you go. Well, let's not
6
preempt,
definitely.
okay? Let's not preempt, let's give people a chance to work their way through it. So, the first question, a man appeared after the owner had turned off his store lights. What do you think, true or false? How many people think false? Okay, and so I guess everybody else thinks true. Okay, so the answer is false. All right? The
Why is
story-
it false?
Okay, the story says a businessman turned off the lights, but we don't know if he is the owner.
Yeah, but that's a false assumption.
The thing is, we don't know. It's not so much that it's true or false, we just don't, from the story as it's written, we don't have that information.
That's an
We have to
assumption
fill
you're
in
making.
that information. I know, it's tricky.
The question is, can be true or false, depending upon
No,
how yours.
you have to pick true
You
or
have to
false.
just pick.
I know, I said true.
Okay,
It's false.
And
It's
if you
false.
look
right, at the story,
at the story,
yeah.
One assumes.
It says a businessman, blah, 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 then it says the owner opened the cash register, but it didn't say they were the same person. It could be of somebody
it didn't,
visiting.
but it's normally, you could link
Oh,
them.
right.
Ah!
Stereotypes.
If we had to fill in to be able to answer
Yeah.
true or false, that's what
Yeah.
you did, that's what
Yeah.
everybody did, and based on our own experiences, that's how you've come up with different answers. to some-
But a businessman is the owner, and so therefore I would assume.
The owner might have been a woman.
All right, let's go on to number 2. Let's go on. We can talk more about this. Right? So number 2, the robber was a man. Is that true or false? How many people think true?
You don't know.
Okay, so obviously you all think it's false, and can I ask?
No, it's true.
Okay, I can't hear when everybody's talking, but
True.
How many think it's true?
how many people think it's true? Okay, how many people think it's false? Okay, and it turns out it is false. Why, the people who said false, what do you think?
You don't know if there's a robber or not.
We don't know if it's we actually
Oh,
don't know.
that's not good logic in the story. Come on. I mean, the
I
guy
know,
comes in, he's closing
I
the door,
understand.
he's pushed to open it again, he's forced to open up the cash drawer and he goes.
It didn't say he forced it. But we'll keep going through these and then we'll see if we
Okay.
see a pattern here. Hang on a second, hang on a second.
Take it to the safe.
Definitely have a question. So I know we had to choose true or false. am I
Right, and there's some
Now-
ambiguity in the
Right, because I had
wording.
trouble with, like, I kept thinking it was not, like, so I was trying to push back against everything I knew would be, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, there was
Trying to
no
gain it.
robbery. Nothing said there was a robbery, but I have to choose true or false, right?
Right.
So when it says the robber was a man, it's saying there was a robber.
It's a loaded question.
Oh, that was so hard. Yeah, that's
And
good.
I'm sure you've never heard any journalists or interviewers ever ask questions or make statements that are
Yeah.
loaded before,
This is
right?
good.
So, okay. All right, number 3, the man did not demand money. Is that true or false?
False.
Okay, and why is it false?
The man appears to be
Okay, so in the story where you see a man appeared and demanded money, and the question was, the man, blah, 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 money? You know what we call that when there's a one-to-one mapping like that? Good, clean data. All right? Only reason we can say with certainty that we know that, because that's exactly what it says on the paper, almost word for word. Good, clean data. If something's not good, clean data, your brain is filling in for you. I don't care what it is. If it's not good, clean data, it's gonna be a fill in.
What's wrong with the world?
I wasn't sure.
Okay,
Um,
okay. But what did you
because I'm
answer?
thinking, I'm trying to read the
Did you
story
put an answer
like.
down?
Yeah,
Okay, what did you answer?
saying, I'm reading it as further on that he reported to the police. He demanded
Okay.
money.
See,
So
he's
that's
writing a
from the
story. It's
owner, that may not have really have happened.
Right, exactly, but if it's not explicitly mapped, like stated and mapped to the question we're trying to answer, if it's not good, clean data, your brain is going to help you because that's what it's supposed to do, assuming it's healthy. Okay? So number 4, The man who opened the cash register was the owner. True or false?
False.
Okay, why do you think it's false?
Because you don't know man and woman.
So number 5, the store owner scooped up the contents of the cash register. A man ran away. Is that true or false?
False.
Okay, that sounded really certain. So why do you think it's false?
Because he didn't run away, he sped away.
Okay, I've never heard that one before. That's a new one. No, you know, I was like, wow, that's a new one. What do you think?
We don't know who did the scooping.
That's right. We don't say who. It doesn't actually say who scooped up.
It just says the content.
It just said the contents were scooped up, but it didn't say who did it.
Who scooped them up?
Okay, number 6. Someone opened a cash register. True or false?
True.
Whoa. All right, why do you think it's true?
Good, clean data.
Thank you. Because in the story it says,
Clean data.
in this case, the someone is a generic, but you know it's the owner, opened a cash register. Good, clean data. If it had been the owner opened the cash register, that would still be true, but then if it had said the businessman opened the cash register, that would have been false. But you would have known because you have the actual data. Okay? All right. So number 7, after the man who demanded the money scooped up the contents of the cash register, he ran away. True or false?
False.
And for the same reason you gave before, we don't know who did the scooping. All right. While the cash register contained money, the story does not state how much. True or false?
False.
Oh, why? Why is it false?
We don't know if the contents were money.
That's right.
That's right. What else could it have been, maybe? I was kind of opted for jewelry myself. It could have been IOUs. It could be absolutely anything.
Yeah, but that's not reasonable conclusions to draw.
Well, but we just know it's a cash register.
Excuse me
People.
for being so.
That's all right, Russ. But people put all kinds of things in cash registers, right? Cash isn't the
Yeah,
only
but
thing.
if you're in a store, it's normal to think you're not going to get IOUs,
It's
you're going to
normal-
get cash.
Oh, this is perfect. It's normal to assume that it's going to be
Exactly.
and our brain is filling that in for us, okay? But if it's not the way the story is written, actually stated as good, clean data, we don't know. So our brain will help us determine which true or false answer we're going to pick. All right, number 8. Wait a minute, number 8, right after that. While the cash register contained money, the story. Oh no, I'm sorry. We already determined that. Number 9, the robber demanded money of the owner. True or false? Oh my! And why would that be?
Was there a robbery?
Don't know if there was a robbery.
It was a robbery.
Or we also don't know if the businessman and the owner are the same person. It's not clear from that story.
Maybe he demanded money because it was owed to him.
Right.
Right. But all of that, I'll talk about how our brains help us come to decisions in a minute. Remind me that you said that. Okay. So number 10, the story contains a series of events in which only 3 persons are referred to: the owner of the store, a man who demanded money, and a member of the police force. True or false?
False.
Whoa. I like how much more certain people get as we go along. Why do you think it's false? Whoever thinks it's false.
Because the businessman could be a fourth person.
Because
Wait, say that again. I didn't-
Sorry, because the businessman could be a fourth person?
Could be. The fact is first of all, we don't know if the owner, what gender, and we're not sure if the business and owner are the same. I mean, it's just too much that we don't know. So that alone would make it false. And then finally, the last one, which I already said there were only 2 that were true, but I'll read it anyway. And look at the story while I'm reading this. The following events in the story are true. Someone demanded money. Did you find that good, clean data?
Yes.
Okay. A cash register was opened.
Yes.
Its contents were scooped up.
Yes.
A man sped away.
Yes.
And why is that?
Good, clean.
Good, clean data. That's why. So, it's hard to, and as someone, when you think of someone like me, I have to interact, especially with faculty. I hear all kinds of cases and stuff, and, and I have to try to, first of all, not let my own assumptions, which is impossible, but, in fact, I keep track of what I think my assumptions are the best that I can. That's actually how I prepare for those kinds of meetings. And then also, I, as much as possible, help them unpack all the pieces of what they're telling me so that I can figure out what is good data and what is probably something that might have been filled in. only because it helps me make better decisions. And I see a hand.
So question, so could clean data be just fact? A fact, it's a
like-
fact because it's stated.
It's stated, that's what makes it in the context of, this story or what, a decision you have to make or candidates you have to interview or things like that. That's what makes it. So something we hear a lot in our faculty searches is, oh, this person, they wouldn't really want to live in Wellesley or live in this, And the thing is, how could they possibly know that? They have absolutely no data. They haven't even met the person yet. How could they possibly know? But to them, their brains have filled this in based on a whole bunch of stuff. And it becomes almost like a belief. And I do a lot of work with search committees, helping them tease that out. And have other techniques they use to, as a group, be able to tease out the things that are good, clean data and the things that might be reasonable, but, we put it in there, but we have to acknowledge that we put it in there.
My sister-in-law taught me a few years ago, and it's been very helpful. If you think you know what the other person thinks, ask them.
Yes, because you'll find out it's nothing
Not
like
what
what
you
you
thought.
thought. And actually, the ladder of inference, which I mentioned before, is a great tool for having that kind of conversation with one another. Walking up the ladder is how our brain gets to the decision or action we do. But with a group or other person walking down the ladder and explaining what's happening is how we can find out where the mistake was, not mistake, but where something might have been awry or where the fill-ins were done, kind of thing. So we use that on all our committees and stuff like that now.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the first sentence,
Mm-hmm.
the businessman turned off the lights when a man appeared and demanded money, almost primes a person, I think, on fear.
I know. It's a cheat. I'm sorry. There's a lot of priming in this and in the questions too.
And so, automatically I'm thinking, Robyn.
Right.
That first sentence, lights out, demanded.
Right. So, and this happens all the time in the exchanges and interactions we have with people. And why does that happen? Because this whole thing of filling in the blanks, the way our brains actually, the way we have understanding of things, and even the way we explain things to people, it's always storytelling. It's literally your brain helps you assemble a story about what's happening so that you can then make a decision or take an action. That's actually what is happening when it's filling in the blank. It's helping you tell a story so that you know what to do. That could be part of the reason why we like hearing stories so much, because it's a very comfortable thing for our brains to be engaged in that kind of interaction. So what surprised you about this? Any surprises? Any things upset? Any things happy? Anything? What's on your mind now that you've done this?
It seems like a really simple story.
Yes, it
It
does.
seems so simple, and it makes me think, these are sort of, factual things that can be checked. But it's really problematic when you hear something like, the Mexicans are rapists. Something which is presented as a fact.
Yeah.
And it's not a fact.
Right.
Well, that adds a whole layer of complexity, and it's very difficult for people to really know what's true and what isn't, and to behave responsibly. And
well, what's part of what is making it difficult, particularly in the United States, because when you're in parts of Europe and Africa, actually, where I spent a lot of time in Africa and Europe, they don't have as much difficulty seeing through things because they're used to curating the information they get, even in a newspaper. They question it, they don't assume it's right, they look, it's just this whole, even the conversations you have in a coffee shop are a completely different level than what we have here. We tend to, and it's, it's generational, but if it's in print, it must be real.
Yeah.
And, now online and in print is sort of kind of mushy, and some of that is where we haven't learned how to curate information that we've gotten. And it's actually, except for in some limited ways, not even really being taught in school, which is really sad. And now we're in a state in our society, the way we communicate, where you really need to know how to curate what you're listening to. Like,
In fact, it's going the other direction, though.
right.
It's
Tell me more.
With so many varied sources of information, people are picking those things that confirm their bias.
Right, and that's actually called confirmation bias. There's actually a name for that. So there's over 100 different types of bias, and if you were to read the description of different ones, you would recognize it immediately. You'd be like, oh yeah, I know exactly, because you've all experienced these different kinds of bias. Affinity bias is another one. Someone who reminds you of you when you were a younger person, or in some way seems more like you, is someone that you will have a positive bias towards more than likely, so you pay attention to that. I know I do. And so there's a whole bunch of different biases, you can look that up too online, that it's good to, you don't have to like memorize all of them, because I haven't, but it's good to take a look at it every once in a while and maybe have a conversation about it and talk about it. That's really important. Any other thoughts, Harvey?
Yeah, I want to say one thing in terms of the school piece too, because I work at a guys' house that was in middle school. I think, let's see, the best way to put this would be that the times, sort of the contentious nature of, let's say, current events in the times, is kind of pushing schools to have more conversations and to do more work about perspective and bias as well. And in things like talking, so specifically recently, talking about like media sources and taking one story and looking at different media. Colin Kaepernick or the story of the work about Colin Kaepernick and kneeling during the national anthem was a great way to, or example of being able to look at different perspectives. You look at one news source and it's all about how disrespectful he is and the military and veterans. And then you look at another news source and it's about bias and prejudice and what people are having to deal with. And then there are some news sources that just, it was very interesting actually, because we just did some, that just seem to just state the facts. As you talk about good, clean data, this is what's happening, this is what he did, this is why he said he did it, this is why, right. But, and even that's not necessarily good, right? But this is what he said, so this is right. But, so I think we're being pushed sort of, I don't know whether it's back towards or pushed into in a good way.
Matured in some way.
Yeah. Hopefully matured. Yeah. So this is actually very important. And actually, my faculty appointment in the education department at Wellesley, and we do a teacher certification. We have a teacher certification program thing. And so the skill set to be able to facilitate those kinds of conversations, and not just what happens in the conversation, but before and after, is something we're teaching our student teachers now, because, and some other things too, because none of this, for the most part, is really talked about in school. In some places they do some, but not, not systematically so that you see it. And a lot of teachers are terrified of having those conversations because they have no idea how to have it. So I think for the leadership of your schools, and we've already talked to the principals here about all this already, but and others to really insist on an opportunity to gain the skill set. You can learn how to do it like anybody else can gain the skill set and practice with one another how to lead those kinds of things. Now, what I do with news is kind of interesting. First of all, I don't turn it on every day because after a while there's so much signal noise that you actually don't know what you think anymore. So I generally limit it to 1 or 2 days a week. I know if it's Armageddon, I'll see people running around screaming. I mean, I'll know if something significant has happened. I'm gonna hear about it. And I don't just watch one news source. So I watch like CNN, I watch Fox, I watch BBC News, I watch whatever NBC, and then I read certain online things. Some of them are pretty extreme on both sides. Like I actually look because it helps me to see how people are filling in blanks and what are the blanket assumptions. And that's actually a good thing to have for everyone to do, because then you actually will, like, I used to only watch mostly CNN, and then I realized, I said, I'm being trained, oriented to filter in a particular way. I'm even being fed vocabulary. And then I watch Fox, which of course, and I used to be totally infuriated by it, but now I'm just fascinated because it's just different viewpoints are coming from different directions, but they're all actually doing the same thing. It just depends on which one you agree with or not, whether or not it infuriates you or makes you feel like, you know what you're thinking. So I think it's important for us to exercise our brains and exercise the way we're going to make assumptions or not by watching these different sources. When I first started, I used to talk to the TV all the time, look at an idiot. But now, actually, I can listen and see the viewpoint. I don't understand it, but I can see how it's manipulating vocabulary and other things so people, you know, and when you go to CNN, I don't see one as being more intense than the other, if you can imagine. And people are often upset when I say that, but now I can see how they're operating. And this way you can begin to curate the data, even on the side that you like what they're saying. You have to curate that as well. Yeah.